how do we define sustainability? Can we have a discussion on that, please?
Making both ends meet with the minimal level.
Make both ends meet, where is the profit then?
Cost, yeah.
And more for the future.
And more from it. And scaling from there will be profit.
Okay.
The current resources that
I'm sorry?
using the current money such that the later will get enough revenue and
I'm not talking of profit and loss. See, invariably in the beginning we all will lose money. I'm talking of how do I make it sustainable?
Reduce the fixed cost.
Again, initially you will lose money because you would have built a team, you will only be doing pilots, particularly if there is deep technology and it takes more time for you to sell the service or the product. More pilots to be done, longer cycle time to convince. The chances of you losing money initially are there. But still you can say I am sustainable.
Like
By saying that this is the price at which I will be selling, this is my cost, and the differential when I achieve volumes, I will be sustainable.
The KPIs can be different also, like how do you judge a sustainable business? It may not be only through the cash flow or the money that you gain, like it can be even the growth or something in the initial stages.
Okay,
So that
like what?
Even a big company like Oyo is not making money, it's not making profit, but still it's growing, so you can call it to be a sustainable business.
So let us not go discuss Flipkart and Oyo and things like that, because that kind of burning of money, I don't know. I think even Flipkart has realized and is now trying to become profitable. So they have this theory that I need to have market share and profits will come. You must be lucky enough to have investors who agree to that theory. Most investors will not. Or maybe investors will be willing to do it in that space. Most investors will not do it in the other space.
valuation of the company or profit for them.
Can we tell sustainability as how to get your customer, keep the customer and grow the customer, something like that?
That is one way, but you have to do it in a profitable way.
Yeah.
So Flipkart is also doing that. It's keeping the customer, sales volumes are going up every year, but they're burning money every time they sell. As a customer, I love Flipkart because I buy everything 40% cheaper. Now, whether their business model is right or wrong, we are not debating that. But in the kind of products or services we are talking, so that is why please don't take examples which are out of context. Take examples which are similar to the lines in which we are in.
We tried with a parallel product along with this, complementary. Till the one catches fire, at least the other one will support us.
Is it in a different space or is it the same space?
Different skills.
So that has advantages and disadvantages. Some investors do not like you to be riding two horses at one time. They say that there is loss of focus. So they want absolute focus. So investors normally do not like you riding. So if you can show a method by which the two lines which you are following have some commonality, some convergence, then you may be able to get away with it, or you can get away with it. But if they are totally different lines altogether, the product is different, the market segment is different, everything, the way you sell it is different, investors don't like it.
Gestation period for the product acceptance should be very low, very short.
No, some of them it will not be, particularly if we are all in deep tech, gestation will be long. The investors who understand deep tech will be willing to wait, but they want to be convinced that you know how to come out, you know what to do in that period. So we will come to it later, that you shouldn't go to any investor who's willing to put money on you. You must go to the investor who understands the business you are in.
Should not be a business very heavy in investment initially. Not capital intensive.
Yes and no, but obviously the lower the capital you require, the easier it is to raise the money. So you can do business model by, let's say if you are in manufacturing, initially outsource it till you sort of get some volumes and all, it is possible. But it is your ability to understand. So let me go back to you. I mean, I'm not picking on you, but since already there has been some discussion. So you say that I will convert plastic to oil, fuel. So you know fuel prices have been varying between, petrol has gone all the way to 85 rupees and came down all the way to some 65 rupees. What does that do to your market?
So basically what we are considering is that we would like to build decentralized versions that would be installed in all the material recovery facilities. So when we spoke with the Tamil Nadu government, they were of the idea that because they were spending huge amount of money in transporting these waste plastics, not all of it was actually sent for laying roads. Most of it just ends up in the landfills. So they would want a decentralized plastic pyrolysis unit in each of the material recovery facilities. So that transportation and the landfill dues that they pay would be actually reduced. So that would amount to few tens of crores every
So
year.
you can monetize that, no?
Uh,
What you are saying can be monetized. That I am transporting plastic waste from point A to point B. Instead of that, in point A itself, I am converting it.
So that's what we are, our business plan is that just reduce your transportation and those costs. Instead, you
So
can
it will become a part of your cost model, no?
Yes. So because that is.
So is it then viable?
Yes, because if we are talking about the indirect benefits of the model, then we are bringing down the cost of return on investment drastically in such plastic.
How are you bringing down?
Because when we talk about the cost incurred by the government in sending these plastics to the landfill, the transportation cost and the landfill cost, everything considered.
It need not be landfill. It can be sending it for laying roads. It can be for selling it to people who will recycle the product for extrusion or whatever it is.
Yes, but not all kinds of plastics. Only when they're in the material recovery facility, only the recyclable plastics are sent to recyclers, and very little percentage, around only 2% of the plastics, the waste plastics, are sent for laying roads. So not all plastics can be used to lay roads. Only just 2% of the cement mixture, the tar mixture that they use. So the rest is still being dumped only. So the government still incurs hundreds of crores in just transportation and
So,
indirectly
no.
it becomes like
So we are not debating the points you are raising. All that I am saying is, everything which you are saying, there is a cost and there is a benefit. So just don't say that the government is saving cost. How much cost is it saving per kg? What is the benefit? How much is it per kg? You have to translate all that.
there be a carpenter in
You must also remember that when we talk of, we talked of pilots and taking it, the moment you have government as a customer, the cycle times are that much longer. Okay. So sustainable business, we are okay?
This margin is basically for our company, right? So CFA should also be for our customers who would be having that cost benefits going forward.
Exactly. If he didn't see some benefit in doing what he is doing, yeah, your selling price is his cost price, no? So he will not buy from you unless he is seeing a benefit, no? So that is called actually value proposition. You are selling some value to him. You are not selling a service. You are selling a value, and that he will buy that service only if he sees value in it. So what can be the value he will see? Either it is lower cost, or he is able to release new designs that much faster, or he is able to make catalogs for his saris that much faster, or he is able to make catalogs with models that much faster. So if he is taking 1 month to do it now, and with you he can do it in 1 day, that is the value which you are selling him. So you have to monetize that and then determine what your selling price is. But then again, we are not getting into that discussion on what value selling is. We are only saying that the price which you determine compared to your cost has to be sustainable for you as a business.
Should we always set the cost as like the selling price, the cost price plus a margin and then sell it, or?
I wish those days come back. It will never ever come back. It was in the good old days that you had cost plus pricing. It doesn't exist now. All the pricing is basically what is the value which you are selling. So the customer is not interested in knowing. Say, let's say I buy, let's say, this phone. Okay. Now, if this was, let's say, iPhone 10 or Samsung S10 Galaxy or something, I'm paying close to 1 lakh. Okay. If my grandmother was alive, she'll think that I've gone nuts, because she would prefer that you buy gold, isn't it? So why are you paying for this? You see some benefits, you see some value. The value can be a cost saving for me. It can be the the softer side that I'm carrying a iPhone 10. It can be so many things. Do you even know what the cost of this is? None of us has a clue. Likewise, unless you're an automobile manufacturer, then it is cost plus. Huh? How many of you know how automobile companies work? I know we are digressing, but since you raised that point of cost plus, they outsource everything. They are nothing but glorified assemblers. Okay, everything is bought out. So when they buy out, they have a formula with each vendor. Every year your selling price to me has to come down by 5%. But they will work with that guy in doing value engineering, in doing all sorts of things. They will assure volumes, they will do all sorts of things. So there the automobile manufacturer knows the costs of production of his vendor sometimes better than the vendor himself. There it is cost plus pricing, but that is very, very unique, and it is for the automobile industry. But most places, if I were to sell something, let's say I come and try selling something to you, and I'm telling you, ma'am, my cost is 100 rupees, I want 120 rupees. If the value was 80 rupees, will you give it to me? You won't care what my cost is. No? Likewise, if my cost was 30 rupees, and you saw value of 80 rupees, you will give me 80 rupees. So today it is only value, other than for some specific exemptions, like I talked about automobile.
Today it is more psychological positioning.
It is positioning. Psychological will come in things like iPhone and all, but otherwise it is cold, hard. This thing, like when they sell, their earlier cycle time for getting a catalog out was 1 month. Now they are able to take it out on what, 2 days or something. That's a huge difference. There is a value to that. Earlier, how many of you know this company called Detect out here? Okay, so they do this stack inspection, and they do it live when the plant is on. Earlier, how were they doing stack inspection? You will take a bloody shutdown, then some guy will go up, and you know the stairs to go up a 60-meter chimney, or basically they are called monkey something, I forget. You know why? Because when you are on the top, you are genuinely a monkey, and you go around spiral thing as protective gear. So imagine the cost of a shutdown, imagine the cost of this guy going up and then taking measurements which may not be accurate, because there is nobody verifying those measurements. So fundamentally, if you have automated that in a live running plant, the cost of a shutdown for 10 days is the loss of contribution for 10 days. Will you not be willing to pay a part of that contribution which you have not lost to this guy? So they are not talking of cost of sending the drone up. They are talking of the IP they have in very accurately measuring what they have. And like this, I can give you any number of examples. So today everything is value. But let's not get into this discussion here, because we are going to do a session on value pricing, and if it interests you guys, please attend that session. Yes, sir. Sorry?
My doubt was on value pricing only. So, my doubt is,
Are we going to discuss value pricing? Then please let's not do. We'll take it offline after the meeting is over. So the next question which will be asked is, what are the entry barriers to the business? So I think we have partially discussed that on what happens if somebody with big pockets comes in. So if there are no entry barriers, you will find it difficult to get funded. So you have to be very clear as to why it is difficult for somebody else to come in. And if you notice, I have repeated the same, I have repeated the same 3 points which were there in what is unique, this thing. So does anybody want to discuss what are the entry barriers? I think we have spent some time discussing it, but if anybody wants to touch on that.
I saw, as you said, that a brand based, in my situation, they saw like, hey, Byju's is the UR. That was the barrier I have to break every time.
No, when I say entry barrier, that is a barrier for you selling. When I say entry barrier, it means that for your product or service, somebody else comes and offers the same thing. That is what I mean by an entry barrier.
Yeah.
And that will happen. That will happen.
When you're in business to business, the time it takes to set up the systems, like between both partners and client, I think that is also one.
So he touched upon that when he said network effect, So the network effect is definitely a point to be considered. That once you sort of tie in very strongly with one guy, for that guy to exit you is a pain, and it costs money. Yes, it is an entry barrier. But a very deep pocketed customer can come and say, I will parallelly do it and I'll fund it. There are answers to network effect. I'm not saying it is not a factor.
Network effect more in the sense that say I have 100 of people, one domino goes down, then 20 others who would want to come back to this because they're not available. But I was talking more in the sense of the shift kind of.
Yeah, the technology is different. Yeah, see the network effect also, and I'll come back to your point, is also relevant with large accounts. It's not relevant with smaller accounts. The smaller accounts are far more agile to shifting. But let's say if you're dealing, let's say tomorrow Marks and Spencers becomes your customer. So Marks and Spencers is sourcing in some 25 countries. If they adopt your system, then for Marks and Spencers to get out of your system will be that much more complicated, because they have to get it out in 25 countries, they have to get it out in God alone knows how many places, and they have to train again, and it is painful. So there is a network effect there. But in the smaller guy, one location, one place, for him to change is not, obviously the other guy has to offer a solution better than you. But where network effect is there, it is an entry barrier, even if that solution is better than you or marginally better, unless it is a sweeping change. Get the point? Okay. So we have to think on how we create these entry barriers. So we discussed one point before, that we are continuously ahead of the game. Ensure that people don't catch up. So it can be the fact that you do continuous product innovations, you continuously improve the levels which you are offering. The other way of doing that is that, to the extent possible, operate below the radar. Let people not even know that you exist. And people should know of your existence only when it is time for you to be known. So what happens is, unnecessarily attention is not drawn towards you. So other than your potential customers, other than your potential vendors, other than one or two investors you're talking to, nobody else knows of your existence. But that cannot be a strategy for an entry barrier. It can only delay the inevitable. The inevitable is that people will come. And the more time they take, the better it is for you. So if you plan that they are going to come and they don't come, you are that much more ahead of the game. So it's always good to be paranoid that they will come. And if you plan around that, and this is a question which will be asked. So if you have thought it through, you will answer it very convincingly.
We have thought of one such delaying the barrier. Because in the field that we are getting into, there is as of now no product certification or process is required. But we want to make it as a benchmark. We want to get our product certified. But whoever is going to come behind us, he necessarily have to follow all this. So that is only again delaying the.
So it is a good strategy, because you create that much time for that extra time for that guy to come in and get, and he may also wonder that, do I need these bloody hassles?
Can costing be also an entry barrier?
Costing, we discussed this before. Costing can be an entry barrier, provided it is a genuine cost differential, not an arbitrage cost differential.
Genuine cost.
Genuine cost, yes, it can be. But then if you can achieve that costing, why can't somebody else achieve it?
It takes longer, that's all, it's not easy.
See, so it is possible that it is the cost benefit to you can come from an Indian competition, it is possible that the guy may achieve it. But if your potential competition is coming from Europe or US, then cost can be. But if it is China, they don't understand costing here. I don't think we understand costing. They don't understand their own costing. We don't understand their costing. You don't know how the hell they are pricing you. So anything can happen. So if China is a potential competitor, they are not competitors in everything, but for your product or service, if China is a potential competitor, then cost is definitely not entry barrier. If anything, it is a problem for you.
China is not a competitor, threat.
It's a threat. It is a threat. So there are, like, particularly for people doing home automation products. And see, there is a lot of feeling that China quality is suspect. I agree and I don't agree. So China produces quality which is of very, very high standard, and China produces garbage. It depends on which vendor you go to and what price you're willing to pay. So some of the best brands which we buy in Europe or US actually comes from China. And a lot of garbage also comes out of China, which will not last 3 days after you buy it. So the question is, from which plant have you sourced it? How much have you paid for it? What are the processes which you have to ensure that you get good quality out from there? And the reason I'm intentionally raising this is, if you tell a potential investor that China quality is suspect, they will not buy it.
Only in terms of quality you can.
Yeah, you get all quality from there. You get very good quality from there. So they will want to know the size of the market. So let's say you say that the market size is, total market is worth 25 crores. Now to us, 25 crores is a lot of money. And let's say you are able to achieve 50% market share in that over 5 years. So what are you doing? 12.5 crores. A lot of investors will not come in. There are some investors who are okay with that. Okay, so there is no right or wrong answer in this. But typically guys will expect a reasonably large market size. So one is knowing the size of your market with clarity. So you can say, in this product, so let's take your case here. What is the size of your market?
When we see size of the market, we're talking about the revenues that would come through the services that we provide, right? So we look at the entire online market, which is about $330 billion apparel market. So we expect 1 to 2% increase in each spend on the digitalization services. So as of today, about $85 billion is the spend per annum on all the digitalization services.
That is in India.
No, this is globally.
Hmm?
Globally.
Globally, you're saying $330 million,
Million.
$330 billion. I heard it as million. So let's talk India, because you're not going to become a global player overnight. What is the size in India?
So right now about 1,500 crores is spent in India today in the online space, and there is also
No, 1,500 crores is apparel sales in India online.
the money that is spent on cataloging today
Is 1,500 crores.
today, and then that is growing at a good rate, and there is also the offline.
So what is the source of this?
The information that so this was information that we got from one of the clients about
That is again will not be bought. So I'm intentionally raising these questions. When you say size of the market is 1,500 crores, you need a credible source.
we have both like bottoms up and
Fair enough. So it can, if you do, if it is a bottoms up, you say show the working of bottoms up. But you need credible sources for the data you give, or you need a working for the data you give. It just cannot be that one day I felt that the market is 2000 crores and I wrote 2000 crores there. You have to be able to defend that. And this will be something which will be, the people will go into it in depth, because this will determine that if you are an effective player, how big can you become? So let's say it is 1500 crores in India or 2000 crores in India. And you can say that I can achieve 2% share in year 1 or 2% share in year 2, going up to 5%, going up to 10%, going up to, you have to be able to justify how you will achieve 2% and how will you go higher. So both the logic of how you will do that is important. But let's come back to size of the market. So one is, so it is, in your case, there is only one segment. Is there any one here where there are multiple segments they can sell to? Okay.
Schools, colleges,
Yeah, broadly it is the same.
education.
Hmm.
Water and gas oils.
Sorry?
Inspection of water pipelines and gas pipelines.
Okay. So you will not classify it as water and gas. You will classify it as municipality business. You will classify it as power plant business where water and all is critical. You will also, when you say gas, you will look at GAIL pipelines or Indian Oil pipelines, those kinds of things. That is a different segment. So for each segment, you will have to do this justification. You can't throw one number and say, this is my number. Clear? Clarity on go-to market. How will I go to market? How will I, if I say that I will achieve 2%, how will I achieve 2%? What is the team I have? How do I understand what my customer is? Who my customer is? How will I reach the customer? There will be a lot of, will I have to do pilots? How much will be the time from the time I start talking to a customer, if he lets me in through the door, till the time he does a pilot? Then from the time we do a pilot, how much time will it take to get an order? So that you need clarity in the whole thing. And you need to defend how you are saying that. I mean, you just can't say that I will walk into a customer, I will get a pilot in 2 months. Your plan is, no? You know how much time it took for you to get pilots? Okay. And when you guys originally pitched, what did you say? 3 months, 4 months. So fundamentally you need clarity on that. And if it is public sector, if it is government, it is longer. Private sector will be shorter. So you can't go and say that I will go and sell to some Indian Railways and I will get a pilot in 2 months. People will laugh. To meet the Godam chief engineer, it will take you more than 2 months. So you need clarity. That's what I'm trying to say. Traction achieved. So this depends on, so you will have to say that, okay, I've done so many pilots in this segment and because of that I'm confident. Or I have sold so much and because of that I'm confident. Or the best is I have got repeat business from very credible customers. Let's say Larsen & Toubro is a customer of yours and you get repeat business out of Larsen and Toubro, investors will love you, because it means that your product is a good product, is a right product, priced properly, because Larsen and Toubro has accepted your pricing. That means the justification for whatever pricing you have put in the budget or in the business plan has been justified, and you've got repeat business. That is the ideal situation to be in. But not everybody will be lucky enough to be in that position. You may be in the situation of doing pilots. But then the question comes, how do I defend the price I have assumed in the assumptions? So we are not trying to find answers for that today. When you do the B2B marketing sessions and the other sessions, I mean, we will go through all this. But I'm just raising issues for you to consider. Your ability to defend whatever you put there, whatever your assumption is, will make a crucial difference. Because it shows 2-3 things. Number one, you understand what is going on. Number two, you have clarity in your thinking, that you have asked the right questions and found answers to that. And number three, obviously, that as a team, you guys know what is going on in your industry. Questions will also be asked, how will you scale up? That people are not funding you for 1 year or 2 years. They are funding you to be a sustainable business as you grow. And growth means scaling up. So some issues in scaling up, depending on which stage, what stage you are raising money, they will not expect you to give a complete scale-up plan. But at least the issues which are likely to come up in scaling. So let me give you some examples of issues which are likely to come up. So let's say I'm in the service business, I'm not in the product business. Okay? So each service offering of mine, when they go out into the field to service whatever I am selling, to execute whatever the service I am selling, let's say requires 4 guys. Okay? So as long as I have 3 teams or 4 teams, I can manage to ensure that there is consistency of delivery, there is consistency of the quality I am offering, and so on and so forth. The moment I say that I need 50 teams for a large country like India, how will I ensure the same? So this is called the McDonald effect. You go to a McDonald anywhere in the world, anywhere, be it China, be it Korea, be it Japan, be it US, be it Europe, you enter the place, it will look the same, they will greet you the same way, and the burger by and large will taste the same. There will be no difference. You buy chips, what they call French fries, same taste. Because they have it, it's no longer the way our wife does it or my mother did it. There it is an art. Here it is not an art. They put it in they have a basket for that. They put it in that which comes centrally frozen. They put it in that exactly, so whatever time it is, 4 minutes, it ejects. So it can't even fry for a longer period. Okay, so how much of the McDonald's effect can you do in your service offering? So that there is consistency of delivery, there is consistency of quality, there is consistency of this. So you may not have an answer at the early stage of funding. But let's say you go to the next round, pre-series A or series A, you need answers on all this. In the initial round, at least you must be aware of the issues and some likely possibilities. Okay, the more clarity you have, obviously the better. But if you do not even understand the issues, then you have trouble. And imagine if this same service, you say that I will do service globally, and this is not selling French fries and burgers, we are selling an engineering service. How will this be if I want to do this globally? Okay, and I'll come back to this. So, they will expect you to have answers on minimum viable product work. Can it be scaled from a manufacturing or service point of view? So if you are in, let's say, the product business and you want to manufacture this, it's very easy for me to make one or two. But if I have to make 25 of them or 200 of them, will I get the same product quality and service? And all this comes back to founders. So you remember my first slide was founders, 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 founders. So it is the founders who understand all this. So you could have a great problem statement here, great problem to solve, some phenomenal IP. If the founders are not good, you will not get one pie. But if there is a phenomenal founder team or a phenomenal founder and a problem statement which is reasonably there, not finely tuned, they will help you finely tune it. They may be willing to, I'm not saying they will. One thing no investor will ever compromise on is on the founder team. Because he is betting on those individuals. That is why when they actually give you the money, they will have all sorts of lock-ins out there. You can't exit, you can't do this, you can't do that. Any questions on this? On why founders are so important?
Should we add more people to the core team?
Yeah, by founders I also include the core team. You can say that I am one founder and I have a very strong core team.
Instead of, you need to increase, grow the founders, something like that to make you less important.
Yeah, but the main stakeholders are the founders who have an equity stake in that. Your core team will have some equity stake, but it won't be the same as the original founders. The guys who really, it is their passion, their energy. Obviously, if you have a lousy core team, that's a separate issue. I'm not even getting into that. Otherwise, we can be sitting here for 5 hours discussing various topics and still not complete the whole issue. The original founders, those 1, 2, 3, 4 guys who originally came up with this idea, who originally came up with this problem statement, who came up with this minimum viable product, who came up with the IP,
over the time, let's assume, the ideas that founders do come up with, there could be a cap, or if there comes a cap, limited thinking potential, does that create a problem?
but that is down the road. Some 2 rounds of funding have been done. Those issues are very, very different. We are discussing startup funding. You have a point. But that you're talking of in raising Series B money and so on, not startup funding. Then what they will look up at that stage is something very, very different to what we are talking about. Some of the points will be common. The founders are still very relevant. But there'll be a whole set of new things they will look at. So one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking IP. When we have IP, please be sure that you have rights to the IP. Okay? Does anybody understand that? What I'm saying? So any thoughts on that? And we are talking initial stage. You are going out to raise money for the first time. How much money should be raised? Sorry? Okay, that is one way of looking at it. Then?
I have the same vision. If I need to expand, I can expand, scale very as much I want. For that I need to raise, I cannot do it on my own. I need to bring investors.
Have you raised one round for funding already? So, so whatever is the expansion which you are talking of at this stage, we are talking of that. We are not talking of scaling up stage which comes up in the next this thing. For you to run the business. So one answer is that I need 2 years. What are the other options open to us?
To be able to make at least 2 cycles of cash to cash.
Okay. Any other options? So I start manufacturing something today, so I buy something. So the entire order to cash cycle. So 2 cycles of that.
You said, then only it comes.
Okay.
Project the revenue so that the evaluation doesn't go beyond the revenue.
But how much money, what is you're saying do it revenue based.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other formula? So, okay, so basically there are many theories in this, and at the end of the day it is the individual has to decide what works or what does not work. One theory is take as much money as is given to you. The second theory is take money for 2 years. And there are variants in between. So my personal recommendation, and I'll give you a logic. Obviously, it depends on the individual whether to accept the logic or not, is look at a 2.5 year cycle, how much money you will need. And this is what your investors will expect from you. They will say you quarter by quarter talk about where you will spend the money. So where will you be spending the money? You will spend the money building a team. You will spend money doing infrastructure. You may want to do a small lab, some testing facility, some this. You may want to, you will need money for filing new IPs. You will need money for business development. You travel, participate in conferences, exhibitions, and so on. So like this, let's say there are 6 or 7 heads. You might want infrastructure, computers, laptops, etc., etc. So you list some 6 or 7 heads, and quarter by quarter for 2 years, you say this is the money this is how I will need. So obviously some of these numbers are lumpy. You're not going to buy laptops every quarter. Some of these amounts will keep increasing with time, like headcount for instance, will keep increasing. So like this you plot this and then total and put some 15-20% contingency for unexpected things, and you will come up with an amount. It can be 3 crores, 5 crores, 10 crores, whatever it is. That amount, in my opinion, is what you should go out and raise. If people are willing to give you more money, should you accept it? So let's say you need 5 crores and people say, no, no, I'm willing to invest 10 crores. Should you accept the 10 crores? Why? Someday you'll have to give it away. So what is so special about not giving it away today? Exactly. The first initial round when you raise money is the most expensive round ever you will raise. Progressively, as your valuations go up, for every 10 crores you raise, initially you may give away some whatever X percentage. It will be fractions of that X going forward. And it will be a smaller and smaller fraction as you do continuous series. So it is in your interest to defer raising money more than what you want. But that is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, I'm getting money now. I don't want to be hassled in going after more money for another 2 or 3 years. So why shouldn't I take it? At the end of the day, the answer is yours. I mean, there is nobody can sit and prescribe to you, do this. Because at the end of the day, you are the founder, it is your company. But whatever you do must be determined by a logic. So that's why I'm presenting different logic to you. And if you say I'm going to raise money for 2 years, then within 1 year and 3 months, you're going to start thinking of the next round. It takes 9 months runway to raise a round. Okay? And so within 1 year, 3 months, one of the founders, and God help you if you're the only founder, will only think of money. So who's doing business development? Who's doing product development? Okay? So then is 2 years the right number? There are no right or wrong answers in this. It also sometimes gets determined by the investors, who you may say, I want money for 2.5 years. They might say, okay, 2 years is enough. Are you willing to be? But I just thought that I must present the alternatives to you. So any doubts or clarifications on this? Any thoughts?
There is a tax, angel tax, and
I don't think even the guys who bloody wrote that tax understand it. I definitely don't understand it. Okay? So, and it is something which is, how do I put it, beyond my control. So I don't worry about things which I can't control. And I don't understand it. Serious, I don't know. Do you understand angel tax? Huh? Well, otherwise, please.
when you get your first investor or any investor at any stage, when they invest money in you, they have either a formal or an informal valuation with you, right? And and then there is according to where you are in your evolution, there is a book value or a financial value of the company, right? So if you are raising money and the valuation
So it's very confusing here. See, what they have done really is adopted a method for stable large companies and put that on a startup. Stable large companies typically operate on an EBITDA multiple. So if I have sold companies in the past, I have bought companies in the past. So as long as you can, you have reasonable clarity on the financial projections, the financial past and the financial projections, you can say that there will be so much of EBITDA which will come out. So typically each industry segment has a multiple, some 15 times, 14 times, 10 times. If you are buying 100% controlling, you will normally pay a premium. So all that, there are rules of the game. Even there, it is at the best on who is in a stronger position, the buyer or the seller. So, but there are at least some sort of thoughts on this. In this, when I have spent 2 hours plus talking that people are betting on the Godam founder, that you basically are investing based on founder, founder, founder. Possibly little bit weightage to the problem statement, little bit weightage to some of the other factors. But so how do I value that? That is why I said I don't understand it. And I don't know how those babus sitting there understand it. So people are fighting it, something will happen. And it's something which none of us can control. So why spend energy talking about it?
One thing I want to add is that while all this gets what you call clarified, one important takeaway for all of us, for you especially, is that get yourself registered in the Startup India, the DIP. DIP registration is a must for getting any of these concessions. So don't postpone it.
How many of you are registered? Okay, but I would have.
We actually gave that as part of the onboarding process. Hopefully all of you can do insist that at least you make the information available that
And in the fond hope that you will make money in the first 5 years, whatever profits you make will be tax free. So that is another benefit of.
That is provided your turnover is less than 25 crore.
No. Under startup, I don't think there is a limit.
First 3 years, I think.
3 years or 5 years? 3 years or 5 years? I think it's 5 years.
5 years.
I think it's 5 years.
25 crore is
Okay. So this actually, there was supposed to be another specialist in this who was supposed to come and take over this section. So I will try and answer this to the extent possible. If there's something which I don't know the answer, I will tell you. And if there is sufficient interest, we can get that gentleman to come back again. His mother has actually been admitted in hospital for a heart operation, so obviously he couldn't come. But February, March time frame, we can get that guy back to talk about this. So the form of funding is the most well-known form is direct equity, in which you do a valuation, and so the valuation is a matter of give and take. The world's foremost authority on valuation is a guy called Ashwin Damodaran. He teaches valuation at Stern School of Business in New York. He's come and given talks in Chennai very often. Has he ever come to the research park here? You don't. But I think he has come to IIT. So I have tried reading that book, very difficult to understand. But he is considered the world's leading authority on that. So valuation is something of, this is like a bride. The mother of the bride will always say the most beautiful one. There can't be another girl like this. They can't. And the bridegroom, where the mother of the boy will say, this is the handsomest guy, this is this, this is this. So valuation is a game like that. Obviously, in my eyes, this is fine because it is my company. I have this potential, I will do this, I will do that. The guy on the other side is trying to beat you down. So ultimately, you will arrive at something. There are some broad formulas on this. I don't want to get into that. But offline, if somebody or when Kannan does the session, we can talk on the broad formulas and things like that. But at the end of the day, this is the most prevalent form of funding initially for a startup. You decide on a valuation, people put in money, you give up that much of shareholding. The next one, CCPS, is also equity, but it is you defer the valuation to a future date, which is slowly gaining a lot of traction in India. It's very, very common in the West. In India, it is slowly gaining traction. So what happens in CCPS is that the event can be the next round of funding, because by that time there will be more clarity, because you have 2 years has happened or 1.5 years has happened. And so you say that whatever is that level of funding, and I came in at an earlier stage, so give me a discount because I took risk when nothing was known. So that discount can be anything 25, 30, 40%. And typically on this there will be valuation caps, there will be valuation floors. So again, CCPS can be a 3-hour discussion. So let us not do that.
What are the acronyms stand for?
Compulsorily converted preference share. Compulsorily convertible preference share. It is now accepted by the income tax authorities, and so, but it's nothing but equity but deferred valuation. It has all the rights of equity. Third is, BIRAC has been there for some time. So how many people here in the bio sector? There is nobody. You are aware of BIRAC? How can you be a startup in the bio sector and not know? Are you incubated here? Huh? I think we need a serious discussion on how he doesn't know about BIRAC. So BIRAC is Government of India funding. It's a grant for specific projects which will be given. And this grants is fantastic because it is non-dilutive. You understand what is non-dilutive, no? When you take this money, you are not giving away any equity. So you still retain 100% of your company. So it is ideal. And we must try our level best to get this non-dilutive funding. So BIRAC, I am told, is relatively easy to get if your projects are very clear. And I'm sure Jaya and the team will guide you on.
Actually, what I see, for certain institutions, they also can get a BIRAC evaluator in part of the panel. So you don't have to even go to BIRAC. You can access BIRAC funding through the IC mechanism also. Just recently I discovered that.
And BIRAC has been there for quite some time. There are companies incubated here which have got multiple BIRAC rounds. So BIRAC is not something. The next one, the public sector grants, is something new. This is in the has happened in the last 2 years or so, where the public sector is giving away grants to companies if you have a project which is of interest to them. So if they believe that your solution or a likely solution is, or a variant of the solution which you have is applicable to them, and they are not talking small money. They are 2 crores, 3 crores kind of funding, starting all the way from 50 lakhs, 1 crore to 3 crores. Now, people like you can look at that, go to Indian Oil or go to BPCL or go to this thing and say that now it directly doesn't affect them, but they are also in the plastics business, so they are seized with waste. What are the issues with waste? They are also in the oil business. They may consider, I'm not saying that, and Tama is on the panel for a couple of these grants. So, good person to talk. But if anybody can get a grant, if can maneuver a grant, nothing like it.
Even the private sector can do the grant, any company can do the grant.
Anybody can, giving money there is not a problem, but the question is that, no, they must see value in you giving them, no. See, typically, private sector, if they give you, they will try and tie you down to some, this thing. And maybe you can live with it also. You can say, you can, what will they ask for? No, exclusivity is a dirty word. Never ever agree to exclusivity. What you can agree to is preferential pricing. So this is something which we can discuss offline on what can be the quid pro quo arrangement with, and this is something which private sector may be willing to agree. Even for doing pilots, there are pilots in certain very deep technology areas where you may have to do a pilot for 2 years. So which company will let you in for 2 years? What were you giving them in return? So we can talk about preferential pricing and things like that for 3 years or so much quantity, whichever is earlier, some formula. Debt. So, debt in the early stage, in the first round when you go for seed, is a little bit unusual. But also because you cannot raise money from somebody who is not a director in the company or a shareholder in the company. You are not allowed to raise debt. So there are some, so this is something which please do attend the compliance session whenever it is held, so that you will realize these things, that you can't break the law. But debt is possible after some time in different ways. So what I'm saying is, don't sort of blank out the idea of debt. The idea of debt can also be raise money from a bank. It can be small amount, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs. So the companies which I mentor, I actually urge them to take money whenever it is available. The reason is, even if you have money in the bank, even if you have done a funding round, you have some 10 crores sitting in your bank. So people have asked me, why do I go out and raise 25 lakhs and pay this thing? The reason you do that is you build credit history. Future debt from banks or anywhere else comes on credit history. And if you have zero credit history, difficult to raise money. You take money, pay it back, take money, pay it back, take money, pay it back. You build credit history. And over a period of time, this credit history will become better and better and better. When you come to not so much Series A or Series B, there is funding available called venture debt. But since we are not talking that, I'm just leaving that thought in your mind. It is very, very prevalent in the West. It has taken roots in India in the last 2 to 3 years. And we are talking big money coming as venture debt. But typically this will be Series B. So you guys are a few years away from that. Mudra. So this is easier said than done. But on paper, you can get up to 1 crore non-collateral term loan from a bank. And I emphasize on paper.
In practice, it doesn't.
No. I know people who have got it. Huh? But they will make you jump through hoops. I am a willing performing monkey. I will jump through hoops if I want that 1 crore. It is non-collateral. That is the best part. No personal guarantees. You understand that, no? For God's sake, never ever sign a personal guarantee anywhere for any money you get anywhere. Because that is dangerous. So this is non-collateral, no personal guarantees involved, up to 1 crore. You will actually get it from a public sector bank. It is guaranteed by Mudra. So this is one of the schemes which came in the last 3 years or 2 years, courtesy the startup or MSME scheme. It's basically meant for more for MSME than for startups, but startups can do that.
Will it be high interest or
18%. Lot of private banks are not participating in Mudra because they believe 18% is not high enough. But that is a no. And they have a point. I mean, if you want, we can discuss it offline. They are looking at 21% minimum. But the question is, if Mudra gives you 1 crore at 18%, is it better to pay 18% interest or better to give away 15% of your company? Huh?
Depends on the valuation.
Exactly. So, debt is not necessarily expensive. Actually, as you grow larger and larger, equity is the most expensive form of funding. Debt is the cheapest form of funding. Because number one, the interest rates will be lower than 18%. It will be maybe somewhere around 12, 13%, whatever. And please remember, it is deductible as a legitimate business expense. Dividend, on the other hand, you pay tax. And it is given out of post-tax income. So it is the most expensive form of funding. But again, we are not discussing that today. No, because people tend to think that because you are not paying interest, dividend is cheap. It is not. In the initial stages, you will need you will need equity. You can't do pure Mudra. There will be some equity involved. But Mudra can be a good backup, an additional source, just like grant will be an additional source. So what else will be seen? One is focus. We talked about 2 horses. It is that. How focused are you? They will see governance and compliance because in the due diligence, all money commitment is subject to due diligence. If in the due diligence you are seen to be breaking all the laws under the sun, advertently or inadvertently, no investor will care. Knowingly, unknowingly, you can't say, I didn't know that I can't raise debt from a non-director or a non-shareholder. You can't say that. So you are supposed to be a compliant company. Obviously, minor compliance issues, they will not bother. But if there are too many of them or there are some major ones, there will be issues. We already have talked about your in-depth understanding of what is competition, what is the market size, so on. So these are suggestions. One is, please keep abreast of what is going on. And the best way of being abreast is talk to other startups, and you are fortunate that you are in one of the best incubation cells in the country today. There are companies which have gone through multiple rounds of funding. Talk to those founders. They will tell you stories. They will tell you what to do, what not to do, what to avoid, what not to avoid, what kind of an investor to go to, what kind not to go through. Because raising money for a good project may be easy. Money is not the issue. Getting it from the right guy is a you as a startup, you need money from people who will not look at returns 6 months down the road, who are in it for the long haul, who are willing to mentor you, who are willing to open doors for you for selling, who are willing to open doors for you for your sourcing, who are willing to help you get to the right kind of lawyer, get to the right kind of. So you need people who will do all that, who understand timelines, particularly if you're in deep tech. If you are, let's say, if you are in a deep tech, which is a long cycle game, and you go to a Swiggy kind of a guy, you are in trouble. Because their timelines, their perspectives are very different to what will exist in deep tech. And as a startup, actually even in life, even at my age, there are things which I am doing for the first time in my life. But for you guys as a startup, as youngsters, you will be doing many, many things for the first time in your life. Never ever, please, please, never ever do something without talking to somebody when you do it for the first time in your life. And if your gut says that something is wrong, 99% of the time it will be wrong. Talk to people. Talk to a mentor. Talk to the people in the incubation cell. Talk to other incubatees, saying that I'm in this situation, what do I do? I have seen distributor arrangements for startups in our incubation cell, where the guy is not guaranteeing you any product sales. He wants to be funded for all the expenses he incurs in trying to develop the market, and is expecting exclusivity. I mean, you need your head examined if you sign something like that. But there are guys out there who have the gall to even submit a proposal like this. So, if you get taken in by some very smooth talking, some of this will be irreversible. And some of this will ensure that you don't get funding. Because when an investor comes to you, he will say, what are your distribution arrangements? Do you have contracts? You will have to show him the contract, and he'll say, what kind of a contract have you signed? You've given away everything and not taken anything in return. Exclusivity is a dirty word as far as you guys are concerned. Think a million times before you agree to exclusivity anywhere. How many of you are familiar with Google Alerts? Huh? Okay. For the benefit of people who are not aware of that, Google Alerts is a free service where you can get daily alerts, weekly alerts on topics of your interest. So it can be pyrolysis, for instance, in your case. It can be plastic waste. So you can take Google Alerts. You can do it by geography. You can say in India. You can say global. For people who are a little bit more evolved, you can do it by customer. So let's say if Adani is a customer of yours, you can have a Google alert for Adani. If ONGC is a customer of yours or Indian Oil is a customer, you can have, because A, there may be some news about him which is relevant to your business, and number two, in any case, to demonstrate I have in-depth understanding of my customers, I'm supposed to know everything about the customer, no? So I know that you have Adani as a customer. Are you aware he has signed some 26,000 crores or something yesterday? In Chennai, in that glorified global investors meet or something. Over the next 5 years, he is committed, or next 10 years, he is committed some humongous number, 26,000 or 28,000 crores. Kattupalli port is just one of them. It is one of them, but there are other areas he has said that he will invest. It is important for you to know that, because when you go next to meet that Adani guy, there is always, you can't sit down there and start talking business. You have to break ice. And when you break ice, you can say that I read about this, I'm so happy, it's this thing, something like that. It's a good way of breaking ice, rather than talking BJP and Rahul Gandhi. Obviously, you can't do that with a customer. So, it's important that you have it goes back to what we spoke earlier. How well do you know customers? So, anything of interest to you, you can do a Google alert on that. And Inc. 42 is a good source for you to get information on startups. What is happening in the startup space? Who is getting funded? What are the horror stories? So if you don't have the time to read it on a daily basis, they have a Sunday version. I don't know whether you guys sleep in on Sundays or work on Sundays, but it's a good way of you reading once a week in a capsulated form. These are just suggestions. And pitch deck, we touched on it briefly before. Please know your audience. When you talk to an investor, I have seen startups using the same pitch deck for a customer, for an investor. It has to be, even for different customers, it has to be tailored differently. Because depending on what is the actual problem you're solving for them, you have to focus on that. Okay, so that brings me to the end. Thank you very much. How many of you are members of TIE out here? And I'm going to go for that, which talks about funding of deep tech companies.
It'll be up as a video as well. For those of you
No, I'm
who
talking
don't
about
know me, my name is Jaya and I'm here representing the IIT Madras Incubation Ecosystem. I'm sorry I was not here to welcome you, but I had another meeting then. But I'm here for the more important role of thanking you all for being here. And this is just the start of the new series of 2019. And we are hoping to see you all come in for the future sessions as well. Of course, thank you very much, Gopal sir, for starting this
pleasure.
off, and just a little something. Could we have another round of applause, please, for Gopal sir?
Come on,
Thank you.
really.
Just a little something for this.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I also want to acknowledge my team members. There's Charles here, and also my colleague Kalyani, who has just left. But she kind of took the entire responsibility, and she'll be facilitating the coordination of all the talks and workshops. I really wanted to acknowledge the hard work that she put in to kind of get all these sessions going. Just a quick note. One, I think all of you have received the invite which contains the calendar for the talks. So the approach we are taking is there is going to be a talk which covers the entrepreneurship themes, the concepts of them, which is going to be followed by intensive workshops. And it is very important that you come in for the talk, which will then be followed by the workshop, so that you can really make use of the workshop time and the instructor's time as well. So kindly block the dates that we have indicated in the calendar. We will try our level best to kind of stick to those dates. And every talk, like I mentioned, will be followed by an intensive workshop. So we hope to see you all for the upcoming talks and workshops. And we are more than happy to receive your suggestions. So please drop us a line if there are any particular themes that you would like us to cover in the talks and workshops. Thank you once again, and hope to see you in the next session.